Good evening, everybody, and welcome to FOJC Radio Sunday Night Live. We're live once again, broadcasting the doctrine of Christ and the commandments of God all over this good old flat earth. And we just want to welcome all of you to the broadcast tonight. We hope you're warm and safe. We are underneath the ice here. We've got a sheet of ice on top of the snow, and won't be anybody going much of nowhere tomorrow, I guarantee you. But we're safe and warm, and we hope that you are too. And we're looking forward. What a great way to spend an evening studying this topic that is so important, that of the Jesuits. And I want to thank Brian, as always, for making everything work. It's just amazing all the things that Brian gets done. And I want to welcome back our special guest tonight. She did a really outstanding presentation on the Noahide laws and the Abraham Accords. A lot of you have seen it. If you haven't, you need to watch it. And we're just expecting no less tonight. She set the bar high, and we're expecting no less tonight as we tackle this such an important topic of the Jesuits. We had a segue last night from the Midnight Ride. We were talking about the Jesuits, and she's gonna take a deep dive here. And when it comes down, you see these little Illuminati pyramids where everything's down in order. On my pyramid, these guys are right on the top. They are bad news, let me tell you. So I just want to welcome back once again Diane Ketterman. Welcome back to FOJC, Diane.
Well, thank you, David. I'm honored to be here and honored to present what the Holy Spirit has given me on this subject. And thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I am most thankful for you blessing us with this. And I know you have worked very hard. I'm not going to say a whole lot tonight unless I just get excited and can't help myself. But we're just going to get this underway. We want to thank each and every one of you joining us for the broadcast tonight. And Diane, takes away. Let's go.
Hey, David, you step in anytime. I'd like to begin with a disclosure that, I know we're going to be talking about Catholicism tonight. We're not addressing any individuals or any people because I have a lot of good Catholic friends that are good people, and a lot of people were brought up in things, we're taught things as children that, we have to unlearn. And I've had to unlearn a lot of things, and I wasn't even brought up Catholic. So um, tonight we're just praying that the Holy Spirit would guide us in all truth as we discuss this subject, as we do a deep dive to see how the current church of today, how our politics of today are connected to the Jesuits. And we're going to start with a couple verses out of Revelation 17, where it's talking about the woman, which is representative of the church. It says, I saw a woman set upon a scarlet colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So tonight, I want to take you from the beginning of where it seems like the roots of this movement started up to where we are today and how it's involved in our politics. One thing that we're going to be looking at is, are the Jesuits using the church of today to usher in the New World Order? We're going to start with Babylon. Babylon was a city where it was the beginning of all the occult systems of the world. Babylon was a city that was built by the Antichrist dictator Nimrod. They built the Tower of Babel there, and they tried to reach heaven through humanistic means by building this tower. This is a city where the beginning of the worship to the sun and the moon and the stars And when they got to a certain point, God said, "You're not going to go any further." And he shut it down, and he brought confusion to Babylon. The word Babylon itself means to babble, meaningless gibberish, and he scattered those people into 70 nations. And so they were scattered with different languages. The word Babylon means gate of the gods, and we know that physical Babylon is the country that took the captivity of the Israelites out of the kingdom of Judea, and it brought the Israel of God into a house of bondage because they were worshiping the pagan gods. And if you read in 1 Peter 5:13, Peter says, "The church that is at Babylon salutes you." And so when you look up that word in the Greek, Babylon is a code word for Rome. And if you look that up in the Strong's Concordance, it says, that it's symbolic. The word Babylon is symbolic of Rome, which is the most corrupt seat of idolatry and the enemy of Christianity. So we're going to look at tonight, how is Rome connected to the house of Judah and current day Israel? And how's it connected to the church? Now, this is, I went to Rome December 23, just a little over a year ago, and this is a picture I took as I entered into Rome. This gate entering into the city of Rome was built in 271 to 275 AD. I went there specifically to study how Rome was connected to Israel. And so over in Israel, they are hoping, of course, we talked about the Noahide goals. They're wanting to bring back those 70 nations that got scattered at the Tower of Babel. They're wanting to bring those 70 nations back into an organization that will run the Sanhedrin out of the third temple. So whenever you hear the word Judeo-Christian, that this is a Judeo-Christian, that is an oxymoron. They're two separate things. Amen. Christian normally means Catholic whenever you hear that. They want to, current day Israel wants to bring the 70 scattered nations from the Tower of Babel, where the Antichrist Nimrod ruled, from physical Babylon back together and have representatives from those 70 nations to rule the world from the Sanhedrin court after the third temple was built. Now, the rabbi of the Sanhedrin, he's calling for this 70-nation organization to come together, to come back into Israel. So I want to get started. I want to start with introducing the Jesuits by just letting you hear a small portion of the Jesuit oath. And what's very interesting is that this Jesuit oath is recorded in the Library of Congress. Can you believe that? But it is recorded. I did look it up in the .gov, and I have the link. The links are, I have references to pretty much everything that I'm telling you tonight, and you can look it up yourself or do your own research. So, Brian, we'll go ahead and start that video on the Jesuit oath.
Of induction of the Jesuit is in the Library of Congress in the card is 66-43354. It's an unbelievable admission to the world of what goes on in the initiation of a Jesuit into the profess. The Jesuit oath: "My son, you have been taught to act as dissembler among the Roman Catholics, to be a Roman Catholic, and to be a spy even among your own brethren, to believe no man, to trust no man, among the Reformers to be a Reformer, among the Huguenots to be a Huguenot, among the Calvinists to be a Calvinist, among the Protestants generally, be a Protestant, and obtaining their confidence to seek to speak from their pulpits, and to denounce with all vehemence in your nature our holy religion and the Pope, and even to descend so low as to become a Jew among the Jews, that you might be enabled to gather together all information for the benefit of your order as a faithful soldier of the Pope. You have been taught to insidiously plant the seeds of jealousy and hatred between states that were at peace, and incite them to deeds of blood, involving them in war with each other, and to create revolutions and civil wars in communities, provinces, and countries that were independent and prosperous, cultivating the arts and the sciences, enjoying the blessing of peace. To take sides with the combatants, and to act secretly in concert with your brother Jesuit, who might be engaged on the other side, but openly opposed to that with which you might be connected. only that the church might be the gainer in the end, and the condition fixed in the treaties for peace, and that the end justifies the means. You have been taught your duties as a spy to gather all statistics, facts, and information in your power from every source, to ingratiate yourself into the confidence of the family circle of the Protestants and heretics of every class and character, as well as that of the merchant, the banker, the lawyer, among the schools and universities, in parliaments and legislatures, and in the judiciaries and councils of state, and to be all things to all men for the Pope's sake, whose servants we are unto death. You've received...
Oh, so there you go. I mean, that is just a small portion of the oath. You can look that up. I have more of the bloody parts of the oath, some of that listed in my book, but there's you can find it online for yourself. And what's interesting is Hitler, he was raised a Catholic, and he said, "I've learned much from the order of the Jesuits." So there you go. That's a telltale sign, right? So I want to start with the first Roman emperor. I want to go back to where this started in Rome in the very beginning with Caesar Augustus. Caesar Augustus was in power when Jesus was born. And he's the one that designated Herod to be the king of the Jews. He's also the one that sent out the decree from Caesar Augustus, as mentioned in Luke 2:1, that all the world should be taxed. This was the way that prophecy was fulfilled, that Joseph and Mary would have to come back to Bethlehem so that baby Jesus could be born there. Remember, Jesus was looking at his disciples was looking at a coin that had Caesar's impression on it, and you can see there a sample of that coin. It has the crescent moon on it, which is relative to Islam, and I'm going to talk to you about how Islam is tied into this in a minute. But the disciples said, "Who is this image and this superscription?" And they said, "It's Caesar's." And Jesus said, "Render to Caesar what's Caesar's, and the things to God that's God." So this is the Caesar Augustus that was in power when Jesus was born. Okay, so he worshiped pagan gods, and he allowed himself to be worshipped as the son of a god. Now, he was very famous. He was one of the world's greatest leaders. He is the one that's developed a lot of infrastructure in our world. You heard all roads lead to Rome. Well, you can thank Caesar Augustus for that. His great uncle was Julius Caesar, and he was an adopted son and heir, and he took over the countries around there, including Judea, and he is the one that reformed the tax system, which we just read about in the Bible. He came up with a network of roads, a communication system, a postal system to get messages back and forth. He came up with soldiers in the military, the infrastructure for that, the political bodyguards, the CIA, the intelligence agents, which is what the Jesuits are connected to. He came up with a police force. He came up with the firefighters. He's the one that has built the infrastructure in the world. That's why they say all roads lead to Rome, because he helped develop all of this infrastructure. So what's amazing is Herod, he wanted to worship, Caesar Augustus. So he built him this Temple of Pan. This Temple of Pan is located in Israel. It's near Mount Hermon, which is the Golan Heights. And we heard recently how Israel has taken that away from Syria, because Syria used to be in charge of that. And Herod built this for Caesar Augustus so that they could do child sacrifices there to worship Caesar. So this is called the Temple of Pan. And also Herod this is the same Herod that he realized a baby is going to be born that could threaten me, so I'll just kill all the babies ages up to age 2. And so he's known as the Massacre of the Innocents, to go after baby Jesus and John the Baptist. But this Temple of Pan served as a cult center for the worship of Caesar Augustus. It was the symbol of the blending of politics and religion in the Roman Empire. So you have Caesar Augustus, the emperor, who is now, we're going to worship him. And so we're bringing religion and politics together. And you can see this Hermon River Springs. These are pictures I took there at Temple Pan just 2023. And you can see that Hermon River Springs runs there below the temple. You can also see the mountain that they took. I took this out of the bus window with the snow on top. That's where they have the ski resort, the United Nations, and all those other. Israel's just gone up there and raised the flag and done a lot of ceremonies up there now, because they believe this is where the Nephilim are as well. And there's a lot of things connected to this mountain. But right below there is a Caesarea Philippi. And that's where Jesus told St. Peter, which, the Catholic believes St. Peter is the first pope. He said, St. Peter, your name is Peter. Upon this rock I build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So Jesus was right there at this same place, right below the Temple of Pan, which is right below Mount Hermon, where he told Peter that. And this is what they consider to be the first pope. Herod went on to build his own self a palace and to build this little city called Caesarea by the Sea, also dedicated to Caesar Augustus. Well, guess what? This picture right here I took shows that it's now inhabited, and it has been run by the Rothschild family since 1961. You can see their name there on the big sign, and you do have to pay them to do anything there. To even walk in there, you got to pay the Rothschilds. That's very interesting. I want you to see how Rome and Israel, the Jew and the Roman, how they have been together for a long time. Okay, so the Bible says that when they were going to crucify Jesus, that's the time that Herod, the Jew, and Pilate, the Roman, became friends. They were enemies before, but now they had a common goal. They wanted to go after Jesus. Caiaphas was the head of the Sanhedrin, and he transferred Jesus to Pilate, who was a Roman. And Pilate couldn't find any wrong, so he transferred Jesus to Herod. Now, I have a Jewish encyclopedia that says that Herod was a full Jew because his two parents were both Edomites that had converted to Judaism. So that made him, in the eyes of the Jews, a full Jew. So he was sort of like the Jesuits, a crypto Jew, So here he was, Herod, considered a Jew. He was pleased to see Jesus, hoping that he would do some kind of miracle. But Jesus refused and remained silent. And so that made him mock him, and he sent him back to Pilate. So they become friends. They had one common goal, and that common goal was to crucify Jesus Christ. Now, at the same time, when Jesus was in Israel or in Judea at that time, it was Caesar was doing all of this building in Rome. It was called the Roman imperial period. Rome was the world kingdom. I took this picture from on top of one of the mountains in Rome, and this is the ruins of the buildings that were there during the time of Jesus. So this is Herod was expanding the political and the cultural influence of the Roman Empire. So he had this big empire he was building. And I can just imagine when Satan took Jesus up on the mountain and he said, all these things, these kingdoms of the world, I'll give to you. The word says that he showed him the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And, Rome and Judea are not far from each other geographically, but you can't see them from one to the other. But I believe in the spirit that Satan was saying, look, what all we're doing, what we're building our kingdom. We'll give you this if you bow down to me. So who was behind all of that building? That was the kingdom of the world at that time physically. And so Palatine Hill there are 7 hills in Rome, and the most famous is where Caesar was born, and that was on Palatine Hill. That was the most significant hill in Rome. Did you know that Washington, D.C. used to be Rome, Maryland? And what's really interesting is that Washington, D.C., behind that was a man named Francis Pope. Now, can you make it up? He was behind the land in Washington, D.C. that was named Rome, Maryland. Francis Pope was the man's name, and now we have Pope Francis, the first American Jesuit Pope. So for such a time as this, right, that we're looking at this. So he even named the river in Washington, D.C., that goes underneath the Constitution Avenue, Tiber Creek, which aligns with the same creek that's in Rome. Okay, so the city of Rome was built on 7 hills. The most famous was Palatine Hill, and the most famous hill in Washington, where there's 7 hills as well, is Capitol Hill. So we have a lot in common with what has gone on in Rome. Now, we talked about Nimrod being an antichrist. There's been many antichrists. Okay, it's a spirit. It's a spirit that's worked through many different people. Nero was another antichrist in between 54 and 68 AD. He was one of the most cruelest, most savage men of all time in Rome. And this is when the persecution of the Christian church began. He would persecute the church through sport. He would torture them, nail them to crosses, set them on fire, and use them as lights in the city. He would let them be eaten by wild animals, and this would be like a circus game to him. And he was just a wicked, wicked leader. And under Nero, it is believed that St. Paul was beheaded and that St. Peter was crucified upside down. Now, we know that, Herod enlarged the temple in Judea, and then Rome destroyed the temple in 70 AD. That was what Jesus had prophesied. In Rome, I took this picture here of the Titus Arch, which commemorates the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And Josephus wrote about this as well, that, the desolation would be made complete by the Romans. So this commemorates what they took out of the temple. Now there's a dispute going on right now that these things they took out of the temple, the menorah and all the temple vessels, are underneath of the Vatican City. And so the Jews are now saying they want that back for their third temple. So all of these things are going on right now. Now, when Jerusalem came back, or when Jerusalem was rebuilt, the Romans are the ones that rebuilt it. And they rebuilt that up on the ruins of the city. So when you go there now, what you're seeing is mainly all these buildings that are Catholic buildings on top of the ruins of Jerusalem that they destroyed. And what's really interesting is that Constantine, one of the emperors that was in Rome, he built 2 very important churches. He built a lot of churches, but the 2 important churches that he built was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Rome, or in Israel, in Jerusalem, and he built St. Peter's Basilica that's in Rome. And so those are 2 churches that are famous churches. Now, it's not the basilica that's there now. They replaced it and rebuilt it. But he built the first St. Peter's Basilica, and they built them over the tombs of Jesus, over the tombs of St. Peter. And so I can tell you, when I first went into that Holy Sepulchre Church, I went in there the first time in 2017. I've been there 3 times, and it is the most evil feeling when you walk in that church. And the same thing with the St. Peter's Basilica. You do not feel the love of Christ. I can tell you in either one of these. But as Jesus was crucified upright and Peter was crucified upside down. And both of these churches, one in Rome and one in Israel, were built by Constantine. These are famous churches. So let's look at the Pope. The first Pope was designated in 222 AD. And he is called the Vicar of Christ. Vicar of Christ implies that he has the same power and authority that Jesus had over the church. Matter of fact, he is called my Lord, or our Lord God. They call him our Lord God, and he has the power to change the authoritative word of God and to nullify what Jesus did. So that is a definition of Antichrist, meaning instead of Christ. So they look at him as if he is the Christ. Now, Pope Francis is the first Jesuit Pope. He was ordained a Jesuit in 1969, and the Vatican City theirself says if you want to understand Pope Francis, then you need to look at the Jesuits, because that's who he is. And many politicians and leaders are connected to the Jesuits, either through their trainings in the colleges and universities that's training all of our students on the Jesuit training, or they've been brought up into that. It's kind of like Freemasonry. There's some people that's like, well, I'm not a Freemason, but they're controlled by them. They're controlled by their money or by their status or their political influence. So this influence of the Jesuits goes deep, and it runs in a lot of different facets of society. Now, one thing that you may not know is Pope Francis is the current custodian of the Holy Land. He is the custodian of the Holy Land. So he's connected to it very deeply. This is the Church of the Nativity I took in 2017, a picture when they were touting the Fatima anniversary. But you know, there's approximately 103 Catholic parishes in Israel, and that doesn't include all the schools, the pilgrimage centers, the shrines, the universities, the hospitals, the social services, the lay movements, the ministries, the congregations, approximately 400 churches and chapels, and at least 100 synagogues that was built during the time that Constantine reigned. So the Franciscan order owns a great deal of property in the Holy Land, and the Catholic Church, the Vatican City itself, is one of the largest landowners in the world with 177 million acres of land worldwide, including farmland, forest land, land for churches and schools. And they've been debating since 1948 what exactly in Israel, what all do they own? They own Israel pretty much. They have 73 billion in assets. And with Pope Francis being the custodian of the Holy Land, his job is to guard the grace of the holy place of the Holy Land and the Middle East that's been sanctified by the presence of Jesus and by all the people that come there as pilgrims. This next picture is the Roman Colosseum. The Roman Colosseum was built by the Jews that they took captive when they went into Jerusalem in 70 AD. They killed most of them, but they did bring a lot of captives back. They think between 60 to 100,000 Jews helped build this Colosseum. This is a theater and a circus. And so the theater was started by the Romans, which leads us to all the world's a stage. Many people believe, and there's much research out there that says Shakespeare was Jesuit backed, that he wasn't even maybe a real person. If he was a real person, he certainly wasn't as smart as they led us to believe in school when we had to read Hamlet and all the other things that Shakespeare wrote, because Shakespeare's taught in all the high schools, and it's a way to influence all of the schools and colleges with a Jesuit agenda to educate students with their values while they entertain audiences with these 100,000 dramas that they perform every year. And they are producing these dramas with spiritual themes, spiritual formations to get the audience involved and to get the students involved in the classroom. So guess what? Shakespeare may not even be a real person, at least not as we have been taught that he has been. So this Colosseum, where these thousands of Christians were martyred and was built by the captured Jews, is a model for our sports arenas, music theaters, Hollywood, the movies. But what I found really interesting, is St. Ignatius of Antioch, they believe, was the first martyred Christian in this Colosseum. And St. Ignatius of Antioch is the person that was saved under St. John, and then Peter and Paul made him the first bishop of the Church of Antioch. And he was eaten by lions in this Colosseum. And interesting enough, that same name, Ignatius, St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits. So they both had the same name. I mean, how many people do you know that you've studied has that name? Now, this isn't Ignatius Loyola. He took that name. Now, to me, you have a contrast here of Christ and Antichrist. Ignatius of Antioch is an example of Christ starting the church. And then you have St. Ignatius of Loyola of the Antichrist coming against the church. And I'm going to tell you, when I went into this arena, I just broke down and cried. I cried because of all of the Christians that were tortured and murdered and martyred. And I can just see those stadiums full of people cheering them on, watching them being torn apart by these wild beasts in the arena. And to know that I'm going to be in heaven with those people one day. And so when you go into Vatican City, they are proudly displaying all of these circus animals, marble statues of all of these circus animals that eat the Christians, that martyred the Christians. That's what they're celebrating. And what's interesting is in Revelations 13, where it talks about the beasts, they're circus animals in this verse. He saw they were like, the beast was like a leopard, the feet of a bear, mouth of a lion. These are circus animals. And the dragon is the one that gave them the power and the authority. Constantine was the first quote unquote Christian emperor that founded Catholicism, which means universal, meaning he wants to bring all the religions underneath the Catholics, under Catholicism. He wants to bring everyone together underneath of his power. And so he was, we're gonna stop the persecution. All you got to do is accept our way of bringing the paganism and accept some paganism. We're going to compromise. And so the paganism infiltrated the true church, the true Christian church. And the true Christian church, really, a lot of people still said, we're not doing it your way. And so they continued to persecute them. They lost their jobs, or they weren't given services. Some of them were still killed after that. But eventually people said, oh, okay, we can deal with this. We can still be a Christian and we can do it your way. So paganism started coming into the church. There was a blending of paganism and idolatry in the rituals and traditions. And so in 321 AD, Constantine declared and decreed that the first day of the week, instead of the seventh day of the week, would be the day of rest. So they would no longer observe the Sabbath, but they would observe Sunday, which was the first day of the week. That would be the day of rest. It would be the day of the sun instead of the day of the Lord. See, the Sabbath is the day of the Lord. So he's declaring the day of the sun, which is their sun god, which they worship, would be the day that the magistrates and the people would rest and that all the workshops would be closed. And so he said this would unite. He knew this observance of Sunday would make the true Christians have to observe their sun god on their day. And so, it's like, well, it's not that big a deal. It's just a different day, So this was a uniting of the pagan religions with Christianity. So I'll have two short clips here. One of how this was in effect in 1610 in
it's interesting
America,
here. It says,
in the it wasn't the United States at that time, but 1610 in Virginia, and then 2025, what might be coming up here in 2025 with the same root from Constantine. So, Brian, you can go ahead and play those two clips.
and it's interesting here. It says the first blue law, although And it's interesting here, it says the first blue law, although not called that at the time, was enacted in colonial Virginia in 1610, and it mandated church attendance at both morning and afternoon services on Sundays. A first-time offender lost his provision and allowance for a whole week.
Wow.
This is making me think of buying and selling. You cannot buy or sell. The second offense, in addition to losing his allowance, would be whipped.
What?
And a third violation was supposedly punished by death, though there's debate over whether accounts of early blue laws were in some cases exaggerated or not. So you think about this prophetically, You're enforcing worship, like Revelation says, with the penalty of losing your allowance or ability to buy and sell, and persecution and death. Exactly what Revelation talks about. And it's interesting here, it says the first blue law, although not called that at the
2025.
Project 2025. Have you heard of it yet? If not, I'm going to quote from it. Strap yourselves in. Revelation 13 is coming our way. It's a conservative Heritage Foundation-led coalition of interest groups and think tanks putting together a 920-page policy prescription for the next Republican administration that they want to see in the presidency. Nothing that surprising in there till you get to the section on Sabbath rest. Oh yes, and I'm quoting, they promote legal regulation of work on the Sabbath, meaning Sunday, regulating by the laws what you can do on Sunday. Unfortunately, that communal day of rest has eroded. Communal day of rest. This is collectivism, not individual liberty. And then they say Congress ought to pass a law mandating employers to pay time and a half to their employees who have to work on Sunday, for the time being, make an exception to those who can prove that they have a sincerely held alternative Sabbath day. This is a foot in the door of Revelation 13.
There you go. So what do you think about that? Well, you say, well, you know, this is playing into part of the Noahide law. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the Jews are exempt from the Sunday law. They don't have to follow it, just like all the other Noahide laws. They don't have to follow it. This is a law that's for the non-Jews. The non-Jews, according to the Jews, are prohibited from observing the Sabbath. It's their day. It's the Jewish day. So we're prohibited from observing the Sabbath because it belongs to the Jews. So they said the commandment to us is to remember the Sabbath day, not to observe it. So that's how they're going to get around that. Now, this 2025 mandate, the president, it was written by the Heritage Foundation. The president of the Heritage Foundation is Kevin Roberts. Kevin Roberts is the second president of Wyoming Catholic College. And so we do have a short video of what Trump thinks about this 2025 leadership mandate.
I'm going to say something just real quick here.
Yeah.
Diane, and I think some of our new listeners are a little confused, but we are not Seventh-day Adventists. Diane is not a Seventh-day Adventist. We have stood for a long time here at FOJC for the Saturday Sabbath because the Bible says so, not because the Seventh-day Adventists do and we're following after them. But that is the clear stance of FOJC and now UCTV, and we have been that way for a long, long time. And we do not uplift the Seventh-day Adventists. They have false doctrine. You know, they've got a lot of false doctrine in there, and I'll just leave it at that. But you go right ahead, Diane. Thank you so much. I really am enjoying this.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Well, I know the Seventh-day Adventists, they are fighting this because it will affect their religion. Yeah. Okay, we can go ahead with that video with Trump.
This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America, and that's coming. Heritage Foundation president, somebody else doing an unbelievable job. He's bringing it back to levels it's never seen. Dr. Kevin Roberts, like some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. but I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
They wrote a document that many of the points are fine. Many of the points are absolutely ridiculous. I have nothing to do with the document. I've never seen the document. I've seen certain things that are said in it.
This is a great group, and they're
Okay, so there you go. There's President Trump's response to that. So we'll see what pans out with it in the end. Paul Weyrich, he is the founder of the Heritage Foundation. He is a Catholic. And he states, that he came together, he joined forces, the Catholics joined forces with evangelical Protestants to come up with this think tank document. Also, Paul Weyrich was also a deacon at the Catholic Church in Massachusetts. Now, remember that state, Massachusetts. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So back to Constantine, and I'm taking you through this chronologically. Looking now at 325 A.D., he created the Council of Nicaea, the first council that would be the first ecumenical board of quote-unquote Christian bishops, where they would bring all religions into one. Now, this group of people, they would deal with the false teachings that was within the church. They were going to bring the true Christians underneath of their rule, and they would develop the Roman doctrine, which would replace and supersede the doctrine of Christ. And there's many things that it covers, but a couple common things is Easter was a pagan holiday, and that day would be celebrated by everyone, and it would always fall on a Sunday, even though we know that Christians celebrate Passover, which may or may not fall on a Sunday. And then in 336 AD, Christmas, a pagan holiday, would become a Christian holiday. It was the birthday of their Roman god Mithras, the sun god. So those are just a couple of things that this council discussed and talked about. Now, the Council of Nicaea being the first ecumenical board, remember Judeo-Christian as Judeo-Catholic, really. Let's kind of look here what's going on in current day with ecumenical boards. We'll look at that next video, Brian.
In our movement, we've never had this coming together of the entire movement to prepare for one event, day one, January 20th.
Some of what we look to do here is lead the way and have urge a president to lead the way in changing the law. I can attest to to use Ed's word from earlier today, the ecumenical nature across the conservative movement of this whole effort, and that only makes it stronger.
There's a battle plan, plans, and giving them the battle plan.
Urge a president to lead the way in changing the law, the ecumenical nature across the conservative movement of this whole effort.
The bottom line is that we need to have an army of conservatives ready to march in day one.
Okay, so you heard some key words there. Army, battle plan, changing the law. I don't know who these other people were. I know Ken Cusinelli is on there. He's Catholic. So I would probably say that if I found out who these other people were, I could probably find some connection to Catholicism. That's what we're seeing. So let's move on to 610. 610, Islam was founded. Now, Alberto Rivera is a former Jesuit priest who has written a book for Chick Publications. And he claims that he overheard, and he was in these secret briefings in the Vatican, that the Vatican is the ones that created Islam. And that they created Islam to counteract Christianity, and they would use Islam as a tool to bring hatred between the Muslims and the Jews, and use this to the Vatican would use Islam to influence, to turn people away from Christianity. So another religion to get people away from Jesus Christ. Now we know that Muhammad couldn't read or write. He couldn't read or write, so he did not really write the Quran, but he had this vision, divine revelation, vision. Now that's one thing you want to remember. He had this vision, okay, divine revelation. So he wanted to, write the Quran. So to do that, he had to have the help of someone, and so Alberta says that the Vatican set up his wife's cousin, who was a Catholic, who was very wealthy, and she helped him interpret his divine revelations and put it into a Bible, the Quran. And so many sources out there say that the Vatican's goal was to create a universal one world religion, and they would use Islam to help achieve this. This would be one of their tools. Now, that's numerous out there. You can see Mr. Alberta's book that he wrote as a comic book on Chick Publications website. You can go to their website, and he talks about what he overheard as a Jesuit priest in secret briefings in the Vatican, that there was a scheme that they wanted to take Jerusalem. See, Jerusalem was like a priceless treasure, and they wanted to gain that back underneath of the Catholic control. So you've already heard that he's the custodian, the Pope's the custodian, and they own all of these properties and all of these buildings in Israel. And so his comic book talks about how they're going to create Islam to use the Muslims to go in there and capture that priceless treasure back for the Catholic Church. And so the Muslims did conquer Palestine, which is current day Israel. Okay. And in 685, they built that Dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa, I can't say that word, mosque. They built that mosque as their prayer center. And that was there. That's theirs. They still have, this is the conflict there. So when you go into Jerusalem, that's, dominated by the Jews. But when you go on Temple Mount, and I've been there twice, you can't always get in there depending on the conflict. One time I went there was so much conflict you couldn't, it wasn't safe to go there. The second time I went there, as soon as we left, a bomb went off in the center there. So we just missed that. So there's a lot of conflict there because the Muslims still have control over what they built. They built that dome and they built that prayer hall. But in 1099, the Crusaders went in there. The Catholic Crusaders went in there and they captured Jerusalem, and they took the Dome of the Rock back and they turned it into a Catholic facility. And they took the prayer hall and they turned it into the headquarters for the Knights Templars, which is associated with the Catholics and the Freemasons. But now, when Israel was created in 1948, then the Muslims have control over this part of it again. So there's this power struggle here between the Muslims and the Jews, and it's created through the Vatican. So the Kingdom of Jerusalem in 1096 came underneath of papal control. The first Crusaders invaded to recover the Holy Land from Islamic rule, and they established the Kingdom of Jerusalem under the Pope, under papal control. It became a Catholic church hierarchy, and they took control of all of the churches in Judea, in Israel there, all those churches, even the church that Ignatius of Antioch, his first church that he started in Antioch, his sister church that was there, they took control of that. And they named the first king of Jerusalem, Baldwin I. And guess what? He was a Catholic. Mm-hmm. So here they are over Jerusalem now, papal control, with the first king of Jerusalem being a Catholic. All right, I guess you maybe didn't know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and Columbus was a Catholic. So here we go. We got Catholicism coming here to America, 1492 with Christopher Columbus. 1517, Martin Luther. He was a professor of moral theology, and he had really had it with the Catholic Church and their teachings. The one thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back was that the Catholic Church was selling indulgences. So if you sinned or if you wanted to get out of purgatory after death, you could pay money and that would get you out of your sins, and release you from purgatory. So that was really the straw that broke the camel's back for Martin Luther. And so he published a 95-point thesis against the church. And guess what? He nailed that 95-point thesis to the door of the Castle Church in Germany, which sparked the Protestant Reformation, and he nailed it to the door on Halloween, October 31, 1517. That was an important date. So some examples from his 95 points includes, which I can't disagree with anything, only God can give salvation, not a priest. And the Pope should have more desire for prayer than for money. And that just because the Pope has a cross on his arms doesn't mean that he has as much power as the cross of Jesus Christ, that's a blasphemy to God. And why doesn't the Pope build St. Peter's with his own money instead of taking the poor Christians' money? So these are just 4 examples of Luther's thesis. And so here we have the Pope and we have Luther, Christ versus Antichrist. And Luther came out and said he's the Antichrist. And he wrote that in his writings and he preached it in his sermons. And so he stated, that the Pope's teachings showed that he was the Antichrist because he exalted himself above Jesus Christ. So the Pope Leo X at that time demanded that Luther renounce all of his writings. And when Luther refused to do so, he excommunicated him January 1521. And so Luther's Reformation put the heat on the Pope that he was the Antichrist, and that spread, and all these people left the Catholic Church and started following after Luther's Reformation, and that Reformation spread abroad to other people who started following it. And then later in a couple of his works, Luther also called for the expulsion of the Jews and the burning down of the synagogues, but he did not advocate murdering anybody. So the Catholics, they were looking for a good way to get the heat off the Pope. So they turned to the Borgia papal crime family. The church turned to the crime family. Okay, the Borgia papal crime family. And this family was suspected of many crimes, including adultery, incest, simony, which is selling church items, making money off of church items, theft and bribery and murder, and especially murder by arsenic poisoning. So just remember that little tidbit here in a minute. We're going to talk about that. So here's the church forming a partnership with the crime family to get back at Luther, to try to find out how they're going to get back at him. Well, meanwhile, Ignatius of Loyola, he was a wounded Spanish knight who had a religious conversion, and the crime family, Borgia crime family, selected him to be a leader of the Counter-Reformation. And he was a perfect candidate because he had military experience, he had a religious conversion, and in one vision, he was in this cave, he saw God holding this orb representing the world. And here's another person with a vision. Okay, remember Muhammad had a vision, right? So here's another person with a vision. And so he said God infused his understanding, allowing him to see everything in a different light, which is where we get the word illuminated, Illuminati. Okay, so that's what he said. And so out of his experiences, he wrote and developed these spiritual exercises, a guide for spiritual growth and discernment. So those are still in place today, being used in many of our Protestant churches, even. Okay, so these spiritual exercises have been infused in a lot of the books that the churches are using for their small groups or cell groups and all these different things. They don't even realize that they're using Jesuit exercises. So in 1523, Ignatius went on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to convert the Muslims. And as of today, as of right now, you can still schedule, if you can get into Jerusalem, a pilgrimage that follows Ignatius's pilgrimage over there. So they take you around and talk about him developing these spiritual exercises. Now, this next picture is a statue of Ignatius of Loyola at the St. Peter's Basilica in Rome in the Vatican. And he's stepping on the head of Martin Luther. And Martin Luther's clutching the Bible. And Ignatius has a book in his hand that says, "For the greater glory of God, the constitutions of the Society of Jesus." Now, this picture on the right here, I took this picture in the Vatican at a mass when I was there. I thought, I didn't even know about the statue because they have a statue every 10 feet. So when I read about this statute, I thought, I wonder if I have a picture of that. Well, I did. I have a picture right there. Is that statute in the sanctuary of Ignatius stepping on the head of Martin Luther right there where they preach the sermons. So this is a symbolic of the triumph of the Catholic Church over Protestantism. Moving on up to 1525, William Tyndale, he translated the Bible into English, and he's a leading figure for the Protestant Reformation. And so he began translation of the New Testament. And so the first English Bible to be printed was in the original Greek text and was smuggled into England, where it was condemned by the Catholic bishop, who declared it evil, saying it's going to produce a deadly disease if we let it get out. Well, Fox's Book of Martyrs says Tyndale said, "I defy the Pope and all of his laws," and so they condemned him, strangled him, and burned his body. And his last prayer was, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." And so in 1548, Loyola's spiritual exercises were published. So here we have Tyndale publishing the Bible. So they're going to come against that and publish these spiritual exercises so that they could infiltrate it worldwide. And these exercises are being used in a lot of colleges even today. The next video is of Steve Bannon on his view of these Loyola spiritual exercises. Brian, you can play that when you get a minute.
You've got 4 months. You've got 4 months you're facing. What do you plan to do with that time? Like, what are you going to read? What are you going to spend your time doing in prison?
Well, I have a pretty strict regimen as is, so I'll continue on. I do a lot of spiritual exercises following St. Ignatius Loyola, different spiritual exercises come out of the Catholic Church. Although I would actually say, if you look at our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I would call myself a pre-Christian. I wouldn't want to insult his name by saying I'm a Christian, given the the very tough and high standards. So no, that issue, and I'll obviously.
So you see how he integrated my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ at the same time he's talking about the spiritual exercises. So again, the infiltration, the integration of the paganism with the truth. See, a lie isn't always just opposite. It can be a lot of truth with just one little thing that's wrong. And that one little thing will stop you from knowing the truth. So 1540, Ignatius of Loyola founded the Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits. Well, they didn't represent Jesus Christ at all. He was called the Black Pope because they wore black uniforms, black robes. He's also the first superior general, which is his title. He was a crypto Jew, meaning that he's a Catholic on the front and a Jew inside. And he had 6 co-founders with him, and they think 4 of those were Jews. 1541, he had his first project. His team was going to, their job was to convert Roman Jews to Catholicism. So they wanted to bring them into the Catholic Church, bring the Jews into the Catholic Church. And he transferred his military background and his experience to accept orders from the Catholic headship as a secret service of the Vatican, a CIA of the Vatican. One old document that you can only find on Google Books indicated that he had an intimate relationship with one of the co-founders who was an Israelite. Also, they had a picture in there indicating where he was accused of seducing students at the University of Paris. So this sexual seduction of students started early. And there are many Jesuit articles out there that you can find of these priests that's been allegedly accused of sexually abusing children and students. So now we have the Vicar of Christ, the white pope, and now we have the superior general, the black pope. We have both sides, duality, controlling chaos and offering order. Except now that we have Pope Francis, the white pope is a black pope too. He's white on the front, but he's really black. So, the other popes were kind of good, but now he's bad too because he's black, because he's a black pope too. So remember, the Vatican said, if you want to know who Pope Francis is, you need to know who the Jesuits are. So even though he's still called the white pope, wears the white robe, he's really a black pope. 1545, the Council of Trent is really the Jesuit commission. They founded this Council of Trent, and it was the 19th Ecumenical Council, but they called this the Council of Trent because this council was made specifically for the purpose of the Counter-Reformation, to come against Luther. And during this council, they declared that man's tradition, is of equal authority with the Bible. They declared that denying the Reformation doctrine, they denied the Reformation doctrine, salvation by grace through faith. They proclaimed eternal damnation upon anyone who did not believe the Catholic doctrine. And they said no Bibles, that scriptures are for the priesthood only. And you had to have written permission from your superior to read the Bible because it's a mortal sin for you to do that. Well, that's still true today. I mean, it's with the Muslims and the Jews. I know somebody in West Virginia that was trying to evangelize the Muslims, and they were afraid to read the Bible because they've been taught all their life that they're not supposed to read it, that they're not allowed to read it. So it's taken them years to even be able to touch it and to open it up because they've been taught not to. 1585, the church, came up with one of their Spanish Jesuits, Francisco Ribera, and he is the one that started this future dispensationalism that's in the churches today. The 7-year tribulation, the Israel separate from the church, the millennium reign, the Antichrist is a single future individual, and he distorted Daniel's 70th week by turning the days into years that are yet to be revealed or to be fulfilled. So his purpose was to get the heat off the Pope still, the Counter-Reformation. He wrote this 500-page document or commentary on the book of Revelation of these things that's been taught in a lot of the churches today, that this single individual would persecute and blaspheme the saints of God, rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, abolish the Christian religion, deny Jesus Christ, destroy Rome, be received by the Jews, pretend to be God, kill the witnesses of God, and conquer the world. So that that was a spinoff, okay, to the dispensationalism that we know today that's in most of the churches. Following him, now there's a lot of people in between here. I'm just giving you the highlights. Was Robert Bellarmine, who was a Jesuit cardinal, and he is one of the best-known Jesuit apologists, and he wrote documents that supported Ribera. Meanwhile, King James, he just declared Rome as the seat of the Antichrist, and he called the Pope the Antichrist. And he commissioned the Bible to be printed in English. Well, what did the Jesuits do? They tried to assassinate King James, but they were not successful. In 1610, they came out with the Douay-Rheims Bible, which was translated by the Jesuits from the Latin Vulgate, and it was approved by that Council of Trent. Remember that they denied Jesus Christ, and they said, we're going to uphold our Catholic tradition and create our own Bible in the face of the Protestant Reformation. Well, King James's Bible was in process. His came out 1 year later, known as the first authorized version of the King James Bible. And it's one of the most important books in the English culture today, and it remains the preferred translation of many of the Protestant churches. So interesting enough, that Bible that was produced by the Jesuits, the Douay-Rheims Bible, 2 presidents have sworn in on that Bible. JFK, who was the first Catholic president, and Biden, who is the second Catholic president. So both of the Catholic presidents of the United States have sworn in on that Bible. Joe Biden was also inaugurated. His inauguration was performed by a Jesuit priest who, of course, has been in the news for inappropriate behavior. He had to resign. And both of Biden's sons are Jesuit graduates from Georgetown University. So, Brian, let's play that video of Joe Biden.
On Wednesday morning, in the hours before he was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden attended Mass at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, a prominent Catholic church not far from the White House, which was the site of the funeral for John F. Kennedy, the only other Catholic president in American history. President Biden later took the oath of office with his left hand on a Bible that has been in his family since 1893. The president always has spoken openly and proudly about his faith, but how does it line up with his policy proposals?
Okay, so there you go. He swore in on the Jesuit Bible. In 1614, we get another Spanish Jesuit, Alcazar, who came up with another theology called preterism. So that is that all the prophecy in the Bible is history. So now the Catholics, the Jesuits, have come up with preterism and futurism. They're getting everybody's eyes that they can, either in the past or in the future. When the Bible and the doctrine of Christ is about present reality. It's about today is the day of salvation. The kingdom of God is within you. It's what is Jesus going to do for me today? What is my relationship with him today? I'm not escaping and getting out of here. I'm not looking at the past and saying, well, that already happened. He's not here for me today. So they wanted to get your eyes either in the past or in the future. Amen. And so they had 2 theologians to come up with those 2 doctrines. And around the same time this doctrine was coming out, the Jesuits was building the Notre Dame Cathedral. And so that's been in the news, so I wanted to put that in there. 1620, the Pilgrims arrived. Remember, Massachusetts, there's that state again. The Pilgrims arrived and they signed the Mayflower Compact, and they wanted to sign this compact to lay the foundation for American democracy. They were known as the Separatists. They came out from among them to be ye separate, okay? They came out from, they left the Church of England, which is a combination of the Catholic teachings and the Reformed teachings, and they wanted to come out and be separate. So they signed this Mayflower Compact. Anyway, the Notre Dame Cathedral that was built by the Jesuits it was not rebuilt here recently by the Jesuits, but the initial one was built by the Jesuits. You can see that the new changes. This is a new picture that they just opened up. You can see how that floor is similar to the floor in the Masonic Hall. Remember the black and the white Pope, the two sides, they represent both sides. It's a symbol of Antichrist, black being chaos against Christ, white being order instead of Christ. So anytime you see that, that is a symbol, a symbolic of the black and white duality, but that's symbolic of the Antichrist. So I wanted to follow up some of the things on Freemasonry. So I went to Massachusetts, and I wanted to find the Mayflower Compact, and I could hardly find it. It was on a back wall, not very visible. I had to ask where it was, but I finally found it, and I noticed that all the license plates said the Spirit of America, and that what I found out was Old England is New England. But it's interesting that the doctrine of the Jesuits, that's the same doctrine of the Jesuits that's on file in the Library of Congress, that was published in Boston, Massachusetts. And so Massachusetts, I found out a lot of things about the Freemasons there. I do have that on a teaching on my YouTube channel. Anyway, John Winthrop, he was the governor of Massachusetts, and he said one of the reasons that they immigrated to New England, he said, it will be a service to the church of great consequence to carry the gospel into those parts of the world, to help on the coming of the fullness of the Gentiles, and to raise a bulwark against the kingdom of Antichrist, which the Jesuits labor to rear up in those parts. So what he's saying is that, they came here, they're going to come against the Jesuits, who's rearing up here in colonial America, in the colonies. So they were already here. Of course, said Christopher Columbus was a Catholic. So 1717, 200 years after Luther's Reformation, Freemasonry established their first Grand Lodge in the United Grand Lodge of England. So 200 years after the Reformation and 200 years before the Balfour Declaration. So those are important dates, 1517, 1717, and 1917. Those are 200 years of these important dates. 1752, George Washington was initiated into the Freemasons in the Fredericksburg Lodge of Virginia. And that's one of the reasons why I went to Massachusetts, because my one of my hometowns is right near. I work right near the George Washington's office, and so he has a lot of historical things in Virginia. But Washington's involvement with Freemasonry was significant. He was actually in many positions, but also the worshipful master of his lodge. So the Jesuits were becoming very powerful and wealthy. Remember, they were started by the Borgia crime family. And so they were taught very well to be criminals and warmongers. And it got to the point where they were just expelled and suppressed by a lot of places. Portugal expelled them. The Parliament of Paris declared that their doctrine was lethal, and they burned all of the Jesuit books, and they closed their Jesuit colleges. France, the chief minister and advisor to King Charles, despised the church, and he sought to limit their power. They were kicked out of Spain, Sicily, and Latin America. King Charles there in Spain ordered that 6,000 of them be rounded up and shipped to the Papal States, which are now in Italy. The Jesuits were suppressed by Pope Clement XIV officially. Now remember about the Borgia crime family. One of their specialties was poisoning. Well, he suppressed them July 21, 1773, and 14 months later he was poisoned. So that was interesting. They could never prove anything, of course, but you can do your own research on that. So despite their suppression, the Jesuits did not entirely disappear because many of them were connected to colleges and businesses. They had established themselves, and they continued to operate in secret in China, Russia, Prussia, and the United States. So they were still here. May the 1st, 1776 is an important date. And then 2 months later, July the 4th, 1776 is an important date. In May, the Illuminati was founded, and in July, the Declaration of Independence was signed. So this guy, Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, he was the founder of the Illuminati. And he told the members of this association to become Freemasons and to move up to leadership positions so that they could spread the Illuminati propaganda. Well, 9 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, and Benjamin Franklin, he was the Grand Master of the Pennsylvania Freemasonry. So here we have the Jesuits operating in secret, but they're not saying that they're the Jesuits anymore. They're saying that they're the Illuminati, and they're going to become even stronger in a different society. So who and what was the Illuminati? These 3 men, sometimes called Hell's Council, consisted of Jacob Frank, who was a Jewish messiah. He claimed to be the reincarnation of Zabbatai Zevi, who was the Jewish messiah in 1666. You can't make this stuff up. What they taught was that the more you sin, the more redemption you'll have. So, they had sex cults, they had ritual sacrifices, they were in Jewish mysticism with the Kabbalah. And he led a lot of the Jews to Catholicism. And then these are the 3 guys that started this. Adam Weishaupt, he was a Jesuit Catholic priest and a Satanist. And he was also a professor at one of the colleges for civil law and canon law. And his plan was to join all the occult forces into one powerful secret organization. And he also was initiated into the Masonic Lodge in 1777. And then the 3rd person was Mayer Rothschild, an Ashkenazi Jew, which is a lot of the Jews that are in Israel now are Ashkenazi. I sat beside one on the plane when I was going there. And he's the founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty. And he said, we're going to accept Jacob Frank's doctrine of you're redeemed through sin instead of through faith. And so he financed the Illuminati, and he hoped that they would overthrow all the world's religions and institute a global government to be ruled by the expected Jewish Messiah. And these 3 guys with the Illuminati, they appointed a leader to be over them, and that guy's called the Gray Pope. A little bit about Adam Weishaupt, the founder, the one that initiated this, the Jesuit and the Satanist. He wrote a lot of books, and these are just some of the books he wrote. He had 4 goals, and these goals, you can see these today. He said, we're not going to advocate a satanic kingdom. We're going to be undercover. We're going to pretend to be something for God. He said, we're not going to come right out and say it. We're going to gently steer the questioning about the existence of God, sort of like in the Garden of Eden. And we're going to demand sexual liberation, independence for women, inclusiveness, internationalism, diversity, and religious tolerance. And we're going to have a hidden agenda to undermine all the collective forces except our own. So those are his goals, and they were based on an Egyptian cult. 5 goals of the Illuminati group was to abolish the monarchies and ordered governments, to abolish private property and inheritance, which that's already in process, to abolish patriotism and nationalism, to abolish family life and the institution of marriage and the establishment of the communal education of children, and to abolish all religions. I don't know how I got a typo on there, but those 5 things are already in progress. You can see them happening now. So by undermining the world's religions and the power structures a utopian era of global communism could be ushered in, and the Illuminati would rule with their hidden hand called the New World Order. So is this the golden age? Trump was tweeting the golden age of America has already begun. Is this the golden age? That's another rabbit hole. But the Jesuit control is at the forefront because the white pope is now a black pope. You have him supporting Noahide laws with the climate resilience, mysticism about these apparitions and supernatural phenomena, the sexual revolution with homosexuality, and chaos and fear about the apocalypse, and constantly pushing this chaos and fear through the Vatican. So you have the white pope and the black pope. I just wanted you to see some things the black pope said, and how he views himself in working with Pope Francis, and how students in colleges view him. So we have a couple clips here with the black pope speaking with some college students about the white pope. So Brian, if you want to start that one. Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh no, it is. Okay, let me get it for you. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, well, just give me a minute here. Yeah, I'll put it right there for you. Got it right here. Just give us a minute, be patient. Okay, there it is. That's my fault. Yep, that's it. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Ashley McKinless, an executive editor at America Media and a host of the Jesuitical podcast. You're about to watch a conversation with Father Joining us from Rome is Father Arturo Sosa, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus. Welcome to the podcast, Father Sosa.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I know you have a busy week, and in fact, we're meeting with Pope Francis just a couple days ago. Is that right?
That's right. You are very well informed.
The picture was on Twitter, and it looked like you were having fun. But so we do have to ask, since you are the Superior General of the Jesuits, and Pope Francis is our first Jesuit Pope, who's in charge between the two of you? Do you report to him, or does he report to you?
He is the Pope. So it's very clear.
But he's still a Jesuit.
Every Jesuit reports to the Pope, mm-hmm. And it is maybe to explain that when a Jesuit becomes a bishop, the obedience is not anymore for the superiors of the society. No, the bishop depends on the Pope, and the Pope depends on himself, on the Spirit. So, because as you maybe remember, Ignatius de Loyola used to call the Pope the Vicar of Christ in earth. So he's the Pope. So I'm accountable to him.
What is it like to sit down and chat with him? Do you guys have a good relationship?
No, it's a very fraternal and respectful relationship. Pope Francis knows very well the Society of Jesus, and
of course
knows how Jesuits can help him, and he knows what to ask to the society and which persons can be missioned for his projects. So he asks also very specific help and very specific persons to do it. And in a very fraternal way, we know each other's many years ago, but he's older than me, so it's a relationship that has been growing differently in different moments of my life.
Mm-hmm. So you've said the Pope is the Pope. He's the Vicar of Christ on earth. Who is the Superior General? What is your job, and how would you describe it?
Well, I describe it as the neck of a body. No, you know that Ignatius and St. Paul's love to use the image of the body for the church and for the Society of Jesus. And I feel I am the neck of a body that when the head is Jesus Christ. That is the head. And the Superior General is the one who tries to assure the connection between the body and its head, that is Christ. And that's my task, to be the neck, to be the communication between the Society of Jesus and the head, Jesus Christ.
What are your favorite and least?
There's another section on that one. Yes, yeah, there's another segment. Yeah. Yes, from 22 to 22:40. That's okay.
The success of Ignatius with the spiritual exercises were among university students. He was an old university student, and he get together with some young university students. All the first companions of Ignatius were university students gathered by the experience of the spiritual exercises. So
that's right.
This school of discernment has been very fruitful for us in all the stage of our life and apostolate.
Yeah. So all Jesuits do.
So they're talking about the spiritual exercises in the School of Discernment. They're teaching these students how to use these exercises to have discernment. And notice that he said he's the neck that turns the head between the body of Christ and Jesus Christ, referring the white Pope, Pope Francis, as Jesus Christ. Oh, what a blaspheming doctrine. Okay, just to throw in some other people here, high-level people. There was a Jesuit priest that followed up supporting Ribera. His name is Manuel de Cunza, and he wrote a book called The Coming of the Messiah, and he also said that Luther was 666. Martin Luther meant 666. So he was following up with these blaspheming reports against Martin Luther and the Protestant Church. And this man named Edward Irving, he was a clergyman. He took Lacunza's work and translated it into English for the first time. Now this is coming into English. And he also founded the Catholic Apostolic Church, where he had a lot of emphasis on the second coming, the futurism. And then this young girl, about 13 to 15, somewhere in there, she attended it. Her name was Margaret MacDonald. She attended this Catholic Apostolic Church, And here she has a vision. Now we have another person that has a vision. We remember we had Muhammad had a vision, Loyola had a vision, and now we got Margaret MacDonald having a vision. And so she has a vision of the pre-trib rapture, and this doctrine and her vision is then picked up by John Nelson Darby, who starts teaching it in all of his churches, and he's known as the father of the Plymouth Brethren and the father of dispensationalism. And meanwhile, during this time of these people, the Jesuits were reinstated. So now we not only have the Illuminati, that's a group connected to the Catholics, we now have the Jesuits as a separate group back the way they were, reinstated by the Pope at that time. Also, the Rothschilds at this time became the guardian of the Vatican treasury. Remember, now they were part of the Illuminati. So now you have the Illuminati with their hands on the pot of money at the Vatican treasury. And then the Rothschilds also loaned the Catholic Church equivalent to $4.7 billion in exchange for a concession for the Jews. So they were totally in cahoots together with this. So the Jesuits were restored to their full validity on August the 7th, 1814, marking 41 years of suppression, but they really weren't suppressed. They were working secretly undercover. And they celebrated 200 years of their restoration with their Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis. So we do have a little video on that 200 years Jesuit celebration.
On August 7th, On August 7th, 1814, Pope Pius VII restored the Society of Jesus, which was suppressed in most of Europe for 41 years. 200 years later, the first Jesuit Pope will celebrate the anniversary at the main church of the Society in Rome.
The date of September the 27th was not chosen by chance. For us Jesuits, it is a very important day because on September the 27th, 1540, Pope Paul III approved the society for the first time.
Pope Francis will arrive at 5 in the afternoon at the Jesuit Church, where he will preside over a ceremony of thanksgiving. His homily will be one of the most anticipated moments.
We do not know what he will tell us. We hope that he will give us some direction to tell us what he wants from the Jesuits for the future of the society and the society in the years to come.
After his homily, one Jesuit from each continent will leave a lit candle at the feet of Our Lady of the Way, an image of particular devotion for the Jesuits. This is the Pope's fourth visit to the Jesuit Church. On July 31st, 2013, he celebrated the feast of St. Ignatius of Loyola. On September 9th of the same year, he visited the tomb of the Superior General, Father Pedro Arrupe. And lastly, on January 3rd, 2014, he celebrated a Mass of Thanksgiving for the canonization of Pedro Fabro.
Okay, so while all of these things are going on, the reinstatement, the Illuminati, the infiltration, there's false religions forming. The portals of hell have opened. Major cults were being developed during the season of Darbyism. Mormonism came about, the Seventh-day Adventists, the National Spiritualist Association, the Christian Science movement, Jehovah's Witnesses. 1848, Karl Marx, who was also Jewish, brought about communism, own nothing and be happy. Socialism came about with wealth redistribution. And in 1895, the Rothschilds bailed out the U.S. government. So, you are a slave to who you owe money to. So the Black Pope, the Superior General, has also been noted in several articles that he's a communist and a modernist. And I've read recently, where Kamala Harris's father was a communist and a Marxist. And this article says that the Black Pope is just carrying out the White Pope's agenda, who's really a Black Pope. And we do know that the popes have been associated with communism and Marxism. Here's Fidel Castro with the Pope. The Jesuit influenced Marxist revolutionary article about the Pope meeting with Fidel Castro. And we have Pope Francis, who said that the Christian tradition has never been recognized the right to private property. So, here you go. Own nothing and be happy. Pope Francis is saying, he stressed the social purpose of all forms of private property, meaning that you would redistribute your wealth. Therefore, giving into that Illuminati goal of doing away with inheritance and private property. So Darby met up with this guy, Schofield later took Darby's work, Cyrus Schofield, to bring this Jesuit message to the Protestants. So Darby had built on the work of Lacunza, who had built on the work of Ribera. So these were the two Jesuits. That's now this information is transferring to Cyrus Schofield, who wrote a Bible built on the work of Darby. He said he was a doctorate, but nobody could ever prove where he got his doctorate from. But interesting, his Bible, he had a 1909 Bible, but then that was the sixth Bible. Then the next one that came out was the Big Bible that went everywhere, the 1917 Bible. It came out the same year that the Balfour Declaration came out. The Balfour Declaration was from the British government asking for the support of a national home for the Jewish people. This letter was written from the British government to Lord Rothschild. Remember, the Rothschilds are part of the Illuminati that's connected to the Catholic Church. And Jacob Rothschild, who was a grandson or great-grandson of Lord Rothschild, this declaration was written to, he claims my ancestors forced the British government to sign the Balfour Declaration. So remember, they held the money of the Vatican. They're the treasury. They had all that money. They had given a loan to the U.S. government. They wanted concessions for the Jews. And this came out the same year that this Bible come out. Lord Rothschild was a graduate from Oxford University. And of course, Oxford University Press is the one that put the Bible out. So there were limited advertising, selling millions of copies. And so his Bible supported world Zionism, which is what you see now as this Zionism that's supporting that the Jews can do no wrong, no matter what's being done, that they're the chosen people, even though that's part of the Schofield commentary, separating the state of Israel against the Christian church, which at that time when this Bible was written, there wasn't even a state of Israel. So the agenda was being put out before there was ever a state of Israel. And so this radically changed the King James Version that was put out. And this has been financed by Freemasonry. Samuel Uttenmeyer was a Freemason that funded this Bible to go out. This theology recognized the Jews as the rightful heirs of the land of Israel, which wasn't even the land of Israel, it was Palestine. And it would ultimately lead millions of Americans, American evangelicals, to go into the Zionist camp and infiltrated the Protestant Christianity. So what Darby planted, Schofield watered, and what Schofield planted, the church watered. And the biggest media icon to promote this Bible was Billy Graham. You see him here with the Pope, who has the Jesuit logo on the front of his robe. Billy Graham was funded by Freemasonry, William Hurst. You can look that up yourself. There's a lot of documents out there on that. No one in the Bible ever prayed one little prayer and they were saved. Okay, so that watered down what you needed to do. When millions and thousands of people are coming forward, it's easy to go forward with the group. It comes back to, what do you do in private? Who are you when you're by yourself? It's easy to follow a whole crowd down to say a couple sentences, but what is it to actually repent and turn from your ways and confess Jesus Christ publicly in front of other people when you're by yourself. So the sinner's prayer was part of the watering down of the Protestant movement that, we're all good, or we're all together in this. So the spirituality of Loyola became mainstream evangelical teaching. Norman Vincent Peale said it's not necessary to be born again. He said, I found eternal peace and a Shinto shrine, he said. So all of this doctrine has been infiltrated into books that's been popularized. And I tell you, the more popular they are, the faster I run away from them. Because the road is the road where few there be that find it. Okay, so I have a little clip here of Robert Schuller and Billy Graham. If we want to play that, please.
Tell me, what do you think is the future of Christianity?
Well, Christianity and being a true believer, I think there's the body of Christ, which comes from all the Christian groups around the world, or outside the Christian groups. I think everybody that loves Christ or knows Christ, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're members of the body of Christ. And I don't think that we're going to see a great sweeping revival that will turn the whole world to Christ at any time. I think James answered that, the Apostle James, in the first council in Jerusalem, when he said that God's purpose for this age is to call out a people for his name. And that's what God is doing today. He's calling people out of the world for his name, whether they come from the Muslim world or the Buddhist world or the Christian world or the non-believing world. They are members of the body of Christ because they've been called by God. They may not even know the name of Jesus, but they know in their heart that they need something that they don't have, and they turn to the only light that they have. And I think that they are saved and that they're going to be with us in heaven.
This is fantastic. I'm so thrilled to hear you say that. There's a wideness in God's mercy.
Anytime Robert Schuller says that he's thrilled to hear you say that, you need to be leery, because Robert Schuller is a 33rd degree Mason. And he and Norman Vincent Peale was his mentor, who is also a 33rd degree Mason. And once you become a 33rd degree Mason, you are informed. Every level you go up, you're given more and more secrets. In the 33rd degree, you are told specifically that Lucifer is the god that you're worshiping. So both of those people, Norman Vincent Peale and Robert Schuller, both knew, if they were 33rd degree Masons, that their Lucifer is the god they worship in that organization. So the Jesuits, remember their goal, the Illuminati goal, Adam Weishaupt told them to infiltrate the Freemasons to bring in their agenda into the organizations through the Freemasons, because they have these powerful positions in the church and the courtroom and in the colleges. They're in all these different organizations. So we have a little clip here on the Grandmaster of Positivity. We'll look at that video.
Thoughts.
It says it's right in front of what is the Jesuits. Yeah, the Grandmaster of Positivity. The whole thing. The whole thing. Oh, no. Stop at 127. It's okay. You got it?
Take charge of your thoughts. You can do what you will with them.
And I respect Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, this pastor. He wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And I took out that book and I read it. and I didn't understand everything, but I read one chapter on how to pray effectively, and only based on 3 principles. So even as a 10-year-old boy, I learned this. He says, prayerize, visualize, actualize.
If memory serves me right, I've read recently you have another book.
That is right,
coming
John.
out very soon.
That is right.
Stay Alive All Your Life.
Stay alive all your life.
Donald Trump was raised in the Presbyterian Church pastored by Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. Now, you know what the working title of that book was? The Power of Positive Faith. But he made the statement, he said, if I had used the word faith, nobody would have read it.
And that's why Norman Vincent Peale appealed to me. And by the way, he got the same kind of reaction about positive thinking as I did about prosperity thinking.
Are you Dr. Norman?
Okay, so I have another clip here. Now, you've seen these different preachers. This is just a sampling. There's a tremendous amount of them out there, but this next little clip is one of the most important video clips in this presentation for us to remember exactly what the agenda is of the Jesuits. So we'll go ahead and play this next clip. Yeah. Yeah, start at 120. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fourth vow, they do preach in Protestant churches, and they will preach against the Catholic Church. To be a Protestant like you. Hi, Stephen. You have been taught your duty as a spy to gather all statistics, facts, and information in your power from every source. To ingratiate yourself into the confidence of the family.
So what he said is, you know, their oath is they will preach in your Protestant churches to be a Protestant like you. They will become like you so that they will fool you and trick you into getting into their agenda and to infiltrate their doctrine. Remember, he said gently, Adam Weishaupt said gently, we will turn you to questioning God to where you will pick up their agenda. So they will preach in your churches. Catherine Kuhlman, here with Pope John. She was very much into mysticism and hypnosis in her services. We have a clip here of Benny Hinn at the Vatican.
Popular televangelist Benny Hinn joins us shortly. You may not know that Hinn has fond recollections of Pope John Paul. Benny Hinn live from Rome in 6 minutes. Let's head live to Vatican City and televangelist Benny Hinn. Good morning, Benny.
Good morning.
When you see so many...
Carol.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. When you see so many standing in line for 7-8 hours, what are these people searching for?
Well, they're searching for answers. People are very hungry for God, and this is a very moving moment for me. I just attended a special service, a memorial service here in the Vatican. I was moved to tears as I saw people hungry for God. And this is a very, very special day in the history of Christianity, where you see the hunger for God so intense worldwide, Carol.
Let me ask you this, Benny. Alessio Vinci, our correspondent, talked to many of these pilgrims standing in line. Most say they do not attend church or follow the church's teaching. Might this event change that?
Well, I believe it's going to. You know, you see what's going on earth today, the troubles, the questions, the fears that people have.
Yeah, so Benny Hinn, he thinks that all these people are coming there because they want to find God. They're coming to the Pope's funeral because they want to find God. I will say this because my uncle was a world-renowned teacher, and about 25 years ago, he approached Benny Hinn. He was good friends with Willie Hinn, and he approached him and told him that his teachings were Jesuit influenced. And Benny Hinn rejected him. Willie at that time accepted it. I don't know what today's his ministry is like, but he accepted that and did away with those teachings. But Benny said it would cost him too much. His ministry was already built on that, and if he had to backtrack and take away the things that were Jesuit influenced, he would lose a lot of money, a lot of people, a lot of followers. So I know that for a fact that my uncle did talk to him. The next slide shows that later on, Benny Hinn supposedly was caught in Rome with Paula White. And there's rumors, about them having an affair. And Paula White is Trump's spiritual advisor. She's been his advisor for 24 years, believe it or not. And Trump wanted to build a crystal cathedral for God and put her in charge of it. Anyway, he is infatuated with her apparently, but Paula White is closely associated with NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation movement, which I'm going to talk about how that's been infiltrated after we watch a few short minutes here of Paula. Okay. Yeah, PBS. Yes, PBS. Do you want me to give it to you? Okay.
This boldness. I said, I don't want your fame. I have enough of my own. That was silly, but I felt it. I said, I want your soul. And now knowing him, I feel like that boldness was just Trump-esque enough that it was received. And he was like, it was just, and what I meant by that is, I just want a pure relationship to show you who God is.
Was he a religious person at that point when you met him?
I knew nothing about was he a religious person or anything, so I'm meeting him like cold. I'm meeting him not knowing. Obviously, you aren't Googling everything like you are today. At least I wasn't. So I knew absolutely nothing about his background, but I found out very quickly from conversation number one that absolutely he was a religious person. And when you say religious, I'm going to say a person of faith, that this is not a person that just was formed by faith, which was absolutely one of the, what I would say, dominant formations in his lifetime as a young boy. I would say that, his parents, military school, there are things that absolutely formed who he is. And Sunday school, every single week, going to church with his family every single week, had a huge impact on him. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, huge impact. And he watched Christian television. He didn't just watch it. One of the things that he talks about regularly is how his father took him to the Billy Graham crusade. And that really touched him and moved him. He loved Dr. Billy Graham. But he knew all the preachers. I mean, when we talked the first time, he was telling me we were talking about Jimmy Swaggart. And of course I thought, oh, here we go. You're going to hear the normal story because I don't know who I'm talking with, that I would say the secular world is going to form this opinion. But he had a very different opinion. It was interesting. He loved his preaching, loved the fire, loved the power. Dr. Billy Graham loved his preaching. And when I say loved his preaching, he could articulate very specific sermons. So he's watched Christian television for a long time.
It's interesting because people have noted he's not known as a regular churchgoer. He's known as a television watcher. But you thought, I mean, was he in a way going to church in those years and run up? I mean, through television?
Well, so a few things. Number one, as a child, he went to church regularly. Of course, he went to Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's regularly when he recalls often the day he retired as being one of the hardest days for him. He just said it was a sad day, that he could listen to him for hours because he had a way of taking the gospel with what we would consider parables or modern day storytelling and be able to relate it. And he said, I could just sit there forever. And I think it's really interesting because I've seen a few news stories and people focus on other aspects that, to me, it's just not ever been brought up. I mean, what impacted him was the power of God. What impacted him was the Word of God. What impacted him was prayer. He went regularly, and then there was a point in his adult life that he stopped going to church. I think that was one of the reasons that he called me. I think he was looking for that spiritual connection and that pastoral connection that, as he got more successful, a lot of things changed in.
Yeah, so there you can see Norman Vincent Peale's influence on President Trump. And also, I was going to talk a little bit about how, with Paula White's closely being associated with the New Apostolic Reformation movement, how that has been impacted by the Jesuit movement. So what is NAR? What is NAR? It's a 7-mountain mandate based on Revelation 7:9. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And they believe that you need to seek influence or dominate, that their society needs to dominate the family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. And Paula White says that Trump is going to play a critical role in the Armageddon as the United States stands alongside Israel in the battle against Islam. Now, that sounds like a Jesuit agenda to me because they're using Islam again to pit the Zionists against Islam, which we know that's the Third World War that Albert Pike has already said was going to happen, the Zionists and the Muslims. So she's saying that Donald Trump will play the critical role in this Armageddon with the United States standing with Israel, which, you see that's what's pretty much happening right now, no matter what they do over there. So this kid that I'd never heard of before, Charlie Kirk, he's really come to the forefront. And I'm going to talk about him here in a minute. But he says, finally, we have a president that understands the 7 mountains of cultural influence during a speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference. And then Lance Walnew is a propagator of NAR, and he's also a propagator of the MAGA movement, and he's associated with the Knights of Malta. So he's a big to-do preacher. So the next slide, Charlie Kirk, he's this young kid with this ministry or this association called Turning Point, and he is a 7-mountain mandate. I mean, he's a key player with that, and his movement is a key player in the NAR movement. He says that the present politics as a spiritual clash between the good and evil, and that Trump will be a generational leader ordained by God to save America from the forces of darkness. And he's pitching his message to people who do believe that we're in the end times, and that if we don't seize these 7 mountains, then the other side, the satanic side, will. So his business, the Turning Point, they've been dominant forces in the Republican Party, the MAGA movement, and he's worked directly with Trump to reach millions of listeners. Now he's speaking in Catholic churches. And the National Catholic Reporter is talking about how the Catholic Church is integrating with Christian nationalism. So he's becoming one of the top Christian nationalist leaders, this Charlie Kirk. So these Christian nationalists that are out of the NAR movement says that that there is no separation of church and state, that we're one. Remember back with the Roman emperor, where Herod brought the sacrifices to Caesar Augustus, and he combined religion and politics by bringing sacrifices to the emperor. Well, this is where we're headed. With no separation of church and state, you're going to face persecution for standing for Jesus Christ. This is where it's headed. This kid, this Charlie Kirk, he's Trump's ally, and he is suggesting that children should watch public executions. So now we're back to the Colosseum where people were cheering on executions. This Christian nationalism, in my opinion, is becoming very militant, sort of like the military order. So this kid has a presence of over 3,000 high schools and colleges, with 650,000 lifetime student members and 450 full and part-time staff members in his movement. So we have a little video clip of him here talking about the strong church being a part of this, allowing children to watch televised executions.
I just looked this up, Charlie. I didn't realize this, Jack. The last time that in Belarus they used capital execution here was in 2019, and it was by firearm.
Yeah, that's how you should. By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals. Expensive. It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised.
Well, this can't be right, can it? The last execution in France was guillotine in 1977.
100% true. They used the guillotine.
Until 77?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
There's videotape of it.
Honestly, that's like what we should be doing, and I agree. It should be public
and
televised. Public square.
By the way, you could fund the government
to watch it.
You could have brought to you by Coca-Cola, and no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off. Convicted by a jury.
By the way,
years.
That's going to get.
No, I'm talking about a real thing. I'm not talking
all
about
executions in Belarus are by firearm. That's not a choice or anything.
Andrew's saying don't make kids watch it, and I think no, the absolute
I think
opposite.
At a certain age, it's an initiation.
16, if you can drive, you can watch it.
No, but hold on.
Not even 16.
If all of a sudden you look at some of these savages, like in Indiana, there was this guy that went in and killed a pregnant woman and her 3 kids.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. I want to see him on a public block and get him be publicly executed. And I think that would be justice. You think children should have, you should see it? What is the age? At what age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12,
whenever,
like 6th grade or so.
Unbelievable. I tell you what, when I saw this video, I just could not believe that this is somebody leading this many students. As a former high school teacher, I mean, this made me nauseated. That this is somebody that is in with President Trump, connected to the NAR movement. That is, it's one thing to have a death penalty. It's another thing to want to watch it and want to have children watch it. My understanding is that now they're doing field trips to Gaza. They're taking high school students to see the Gazans being murdered as they stand on a platform. I did look it up, and I did see that there are some tours there now, and I heard that through one of the shows I listened to. But I mean, this is coming back to well, you don't agree with us, we'll just kill you. So these are the people that's claiming that they are Christian. These Christian nationalists these are leaders that's bringing these laws into effect. So, we go from the drag queen shows to this. I mean, you're going from the chaos to now they're going to bring this hard order down. So where did NAR come from? Where did this 7 Mountain Mandate come from? It came from 3 people that had a vision. Oh, here we go again, another vision. All these people that have visions. I'm going to tell you, when people tell me they have visions, I get away. 3 people, Lauren Cunningham, Bill Bright, and Francis Schaeffer, all said they had the same vision about the 7 Mountain Mandate. And they didn't really do anything about it till somebody told Lance Wall knew about it, and he saw a business opportunity. Oh yeah, buddy, we can make money on this, the 7 Mountain Mandate, and they've made millions on this. Well, come to find out, the Cunninghams, they were in this youth organization that had their office in a Catholic building, and there was Catholic priests in there, and they connected them to the Pope, and they got to go meet Pope Francis. Now, how many people gets on Pope Francis's agenda to get to go? And they said that, they had like 45 minutes scheduled with him, and they ended up getting an hour and a half with him. Well, that's longer than any U.S. presidents had with him, so out of the National Catholic Reporter, they're talking about this Christian nationalism, how Catholics are emerging on some of the Christian nationalism's as their most muscular champions. So they're saying, the Catholic Church is coming to be a champion for the Christian nationalists to help them get this agenda through, when really they're probably the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings. Oh, well, here's the mother of harlots, Vatican City. I took this picture on top of St. Peter's Basilica looking out over the city. All of the denomination churches and all the non-denomination churches, the Protestant churches are the daughters and the granddaughters of this mother of harlots, because they're the ones promoting this. The Vatican City is an independent state, and the Catholic Church has deeply embedded their doctrines in the Protestant churches today. The Roman Catholic Church is built on martyrdom. The Vatican obelisk is located in the square outside of the Basilica. It has a significant historical connection to the martyrdom of many Christians, including St. Peter. That obelisk is from Egypt. That obelisk was built back in the day of Joseph, when Joseph was the Pharaoh in Egypt. His wife's father, Joseph's father-in-law, was the priest of the pagan church where that obelisk came from. So that obelisk is very, very historical, and it was really here during the Old Testament times. The Papal Basilica of St. Peter in the Vatican holds 300,000 people. There's 140 statues. No matter where you walk in that city, when you look up, there's some kind of little statue or god looking down at you. And the Pope has his own astronomical observatory at the Vatican City. And all of these asteroids are named after the Jesuits and a pope. So you can do a search for the asteroids that's named for the Jesuits. And the Pope has his own astronomer. So they are very much into astronomy. Everywhere you go in the city, it seems like everywhere you go and you look up, there's the Jesuit logo. It's on doors. It's prominent throughout Rome and the churches. The Jesuit logo seems to be everywhere. These are photos of, you can see where the Pope sits, looking down on the seat. They really publicize Jesus being on the cross. The death of Christ is publicized everywhere, and you can see the sun that's shining up behind where the Pope sits in the Vatican. There's some churches that have bones of what they say are saints, or they are the Christians that were martyred, or the Christians that were buried there. A lot of the Christians wanted to be buried there because St. Peter was buried there. So they have dug up these bones now. I heard recently where they're selling these bones for money. They asked for an offering to go to the restroom there. Money is tied to a lot of things. the burial ground. There's burial ground underneath of the Vatican. They have excavated where the circus was that contained many of the Christian burials. Around that whole area. Now, the architecture in the buildings is called Baroque architecture. This architecture was designed by the Freemasons, introduced by the Jesuits to specifically combat the Reformation and the Protestant Church. They wanted you to be able to walk into their cathedrals and be in surprise and awe. And they use this technique called geomancy. If you go in these cathedrals, see, this is what makes the Freemasons so powerful and the Jesuits, because every one of these designs has something to do with what's called geomancy, which is the science of the sand. And there's a magic concept to the way they design the structure to change the energy flow, to communicate with your mind. It's a divination system. Like, for example, if you walk into a hospital, you have a different energy flow than if you walk into a prison, than if you walk into a cathedral. There is an underlying magic order to the way something is designed. So they wanted to put you under the influence whenever you walk in there, because the Protestant churches were humble. The Protestant churches didn't have all of this. So they want you to come into their environment, their atmosphere. And, you know, some of these churches where they have the lights turned down low and the purple lights and people on the stage, they're creating an atmosphere. They're creating an energy flow to get you involved with your emotions and your mind. So this is a real science, and this is part of the secrets that the Freemasons have, because they know the secrets of the castles that they built and the cathedrals that they built. So they hold that power over the Catholic Church. Now, remember in Revelation 17, we were told about the purple and the scarlet in the church, the woman, and about the golden cups. Well, I hadn't planned on going to a mass there. It wasn't on my schedule, but my schedule ended up getting changed, and I had Sunday morning free, and the Pope was supposed to be gone, but he actually stayed. Pope Francis stayed in Rome that day and did not leave because he was sick. So I ended up going into one of the masses, and I just stood on the side and I did some videotaping, and this is a short clip. And I want you to look for the purple, the scarlet, and the golden cups as we play this video. They're pretty creepy in there. You know, the word Vatican means divining serpent. The Vatican City and St. Peter's Basilica were built on an ancient pagan hill called the Mountain of Prophecy. That kind of aligns with the Nar, right? Basilica is derived from the word basilic, which means a mythological snake. We know that in Harry Potter, the basilic was a giant serpent, king of the serpents, a reptilian, one of the most dangerous creatures in the wizard world. And if you get a chance to go into the Paul VI audience hall, you'll see the statue that they say is Jesus Christ, that when you look from the side, it looks like a serpent. And actually, the whole facility is set up like a serpent, and the Pope actually speaks from between the two fangs of the serpent. So the purpose of the Jesuits is to stop the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Counter-Reformation is still in progress, people, and it's still going on today. And it's going on in our sanctuaries. And if you think it's not going on in your church, you better watch, because it is. In most all churches, there's some connection, because these denominations and even the non-denominations have been infiltrated, because you have them following their agenda, that they're going to act like you to get their agenda across. Brandon Hawes says that, the Jesuits, Joe Biden is an ally of Pope Francis, and they're here to bring down America and the U.S. Constitution. They're here to bring down Christianity, to head up the Freemasons, that fulfill their hidden agenda. They're said to have killed Abraham Lincoln and JFK. And that they founded the feast day for Lucifer, August the 15th, 1534, and that Joe Biden is a disciple of many Jesuits, and that this is the false global church talked about, the great whore in Revelation 17. They are advocating what the Noahide laws, a lot of them, including climate change, and they're the big advocate for the open borders in the United States and social justice. This was coined by a Jesuit priest. We have AOC, one of our legislators here, who's a socialist, social justice. So Loyola's emphasis was on social justice. And the leaders in our Congress are doing the bidding for the Jesuit agenda. There's a lot of Catholics in Congress, on the Supreme Court, throughout our legislature. We have a lot of Catholics who maybe, and again, I'm not speaking against them as individuals, but the system has been infiltrated because they've been trained that way. We are trained the way we are. It's hard to get away from our beliefs. And so we have this duality between the black and the white, the chaos and the order, the wrong and the right, the shadow and the light, the bad, the good, the woke, the Christian nationalism, the against Christ and instead of Christ. The point is to make it so bad that you're going to run for the false light. You're going to run for that Christian nationalism, which is none of it is about Jesus Christ. It's about chaos and order and war. It's causing war. It's exactly falling into what Albert Pike said, causing the Zionism to come against the Muslims. And this is all part of the Illuminati plan, as Albert Pike said. So the Jesuits are a military order. The Templars and the Jesuits use the same IHS monogram. Now the Templars, they were brought to the Holy Land. They were the bankers in the Holy Land. John talked a little bit about that last night on the program. They were wealthy, powerful, and they banked the assets of the pilgrims. They were the Freemasons at that time, building the cathedrals and the castles. The Knights of Malta, which was known as the Knights of the Hospitaller, they acquired the property from the Templars, and so they were the CIA. They knew the secrets. We have two CIA directors that I found that are associated with the Knights of Malta, William Casey and Alexander Haig. But whenever you see Rothschild, that's the red shield. You say, well, Salvation Army is a good army. St. Jude's is a good hospital. Yes, you have the bad and the good, but there's always the Black Pope that's behind it. There's always something going on behind it that's sinister. That is to draw you in, to get your money, to get, your support. This is a picture of the original Knights of Malta at the hospital, a hospital that they had in Jerusalem. I was just standing on the street and I turned around and I realized I was there. So I took that picture in Jerusalem where their hospital was. So the Knights Templars and the Masons over time became one, and then they became the Jesuits. The American Red Cross, that symbol is so important because blood is an extremely magic substance. That's why they want blood. That contains energies that can be used for magic. And They were involved with the occult, the New Age, the New World Order. The Templars have been documented to be involved with homosexual orgies, child sacrifices, crossbreeding, and magic. Just now in December 2024, we're seeing that a senator saying that the taxpayer dollars, millions, is being spent on magic. Why? Because the government is being controlled by a lot of this Jesuit influence, and finding out what the magic is. The sun worship is embedded in so many things. The God of soul. The look at the Statue of Liberty. You can see it anywhere. Just start looking for the sun God that's incorporated everywhere. But I have a couple videos here of our presidents and their connection to the Pope. I have a video here of Obama talking to Georgetown University in Virginia, which is a Jesuit university. So we'll play that clip.
Hello, Georgetown. As your neighbor, I thought I'd say hello and congratulate you on the 200th anniversary of your charter. A lot's happened in Washington over 2 centuries, and Hoyas have always been at the center of the action. Georgetown graduates have gone on to serve as president of this country and other countries, as members of Congress, and even as basketball-crazed senior advisors working down the hall from me in the West Wing. Over the years, you've welcomed countless international students, just as Georgetown students are known for serving all over the world. Your graduates crowd the ranks of Peace Corps volunteers. Simply put, this country and this world benefit from your commitment to Jesuit principles, to being men and women for others. Here's to the next 200 years. Happy birthday, and FOJZC.
All righty. And we have Obama with Pope Francis talking about social justice.
Two groundbreaking world leaders met this morning for the first time. President Obama greeted Pope Francis in Vatican City, saying, "I'm a great admirer."
They met behind closed doors for nearly an hour. Major Garrett is traveling with the president. He joins us from Vatican City now. Major, good morning.
Well, good morning. President Obama and Pope Francis appeared to achieve a genuine connection before and after that nearly hour-long meeting here in the Vatican. It was most apparent, though, after the two met and exchanged gifts in the papal library. The president presented Pope Francis with a seed box made from wood he said had been reclaimed from the first cathedral built in America, that in Baltimore, Maryland. Pope Francis gave the president 2 ornate medallions which accidentally fell to the floor but were swiftly recovered. Neither the president nor the pontiff appeared the slightest bit unnerved by this little pratfall. The Pope also gave the president a writing on social justice, which the president predicted he would probably turn to in the Oval Office at times of frustration and when he needed, in his words, strength and calm. Upon hearing the translation of this, Pope Francis smiled and chuckled appreciatively. Afterward, the president asked the Pope to pray for his family, saying they had been with him in his long journey in American life. The Pope nodded, and the two exchanged a long and lingering farewell handshake. Charlie Gale and Clarissa.
All right, Major, thank you. Tomorrow, President Obama will sit down with Scott Pelley. It's an interview you will see only.
Okay, so there we're talking about social justice. Next is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is a Jesuit graduate and a Rhodes Scholar. Rhodes Scholarships are financed by the Illuminati and Freemasons. Bill Clinton was inducted into the Del Mole Hall of Fame, which is a Knights Templar, and Hillary was also a Rhodes Scholar. Pope Francis hosted Bill Clinton and Alex Soros, George Soros' son, at the Vatican. And there is an article in the Christian Research Network on how the Jesuits and George Soros are instigating the American border crisis. So let's take a look here at Bill Clinton with Alex Soros at the Vatican.
Thank you very much for your visit. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
He is from Oxford, he told me.
Somebody Oxford.
And I just came from Oxford.
Yes, Here. Here. Sit down, please. Voi cosa avete fatto in questi giorni qui a Roma? Forse, non so se voi... Questo è il lavoro nostro che fa la pace.
This is a work made here, and it symbolizes the work for peace.
Okay. So our next president is President Trump. Trump has had 2 years of Jesuit training at Fordham University. He has put a person in charge of being an ambassador to the Vatican. Brian Birch is the person that he has selected for nomination. Brian Birch says that the Catholic Church is the largest and most important religious institution in the world, and its relationship to the United States is of vital importance. But Trump and the Pope disagree. Remember, someone said that they are, Brandon Hawes, I think, said that they are the ones that's promoting bringing all of these immigrants into the United States. So this is an area that Donald Trump and the Pope disagree on. So let's take a look at that clip.
No one rushes to meet the Pope. President Trump was escorted slowly through the Vatican corridors and into the Pope's office. This was the first time these two leaders, opposites in almost every way, have met. Such an honor, the president said. The Pope rarely smiles during this kind of photo call. He appeared eager to begin their conversation. The president, who wants to build a border wall, sat across from the Pope, who says that he wants to build bridges. After half an hour of private talks, Francis met the president's delegation. "Do you feed him Slovenian cakes?" the Pope joked to Mrs. Trump. She and the president's daughter followed Vatican tradition and wore black veils. The two leaders then exchanged gifts. The Pope gave the president some of his writings, including his appeal for environmental protection.
I'll be reading them.
"Well, I'll be reading them," the president said politely.
Thank you very much.
Francis will hope so. It's hard to imagine a meeting between two more contrasting leaders. The Pope, who's already on to his next audience, opposes the president on immigration, climate change and border walls. Their first short meeting was a chance for each man to test whether or not the other would give ground. The president and his wife were left to visit the Sistine Chapel, painted by Michelangelo. The leader, with his own noted taste in expensive decor, looked impressed. James Reynolds, BBC News, Rome.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about Michelangelo. Did a deep dive on that in my book, but I was glad to hear that they opposed each other. I hope Trump keeps his stance on some of those issues. Moving on to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance just became a Catholic in 2019. He was baptized and confirmed in the Catholic Church then. He said he was once misguided. He said he knew that Catholics worshiped Mary, and he said, "I knew they rejected the legitimacy of Scripture, and I knew that the Antichrist, or at least the Antichrist spiritual advisor, would be Catholic, but he was misguided." So he said some of the reasons that he switched over was that a Dominican priest helped draw him to Catholicism. And then he credits his Hindu wife. Remember, Hindus are now forming with Noahide. He credits his Hindu wife with helping him convert to Catholicism. And then Vance's family ties kept him from becoming a Catholic for a long time. and a homosexual billionaire influenced him to change his outlook on life. And Vance hasn't yet explained how his current position on abortion squares with his Catholic faith, though. So, yeah, we have a Catholic vice president now. That kind of concerns me with the influence, around our president. And then we have the most famous Jesuit trained person that's been on the scene, Dr. Fauci, the national voice of reason. And the Jesuit Father Daniel Lahart says, I take great comfort in knowing that when he speaks, that he's speaking the truth and nothing but the truth. Oh, Lord help us, right? And then we have Bill and Melinda Gates controlling the population. And that's also an agenda of the Catholic Church and the Jesuits is to control population. And they're controlling public education. It says here they're attempting to control the curriculum of the nation's public schools, subsidizing the Common Core state standards. And they've given $19 million to Jesuit high schools. Melinda Gates is Jesuit trained. And so there's a bold plan for Bill Gates and Pope Francis to work together to save the world with the depopulation, I'm sure. So we have this little graphic growing where we have the white Pope, which is really a black Pope, and then we have the black Pope, and now we have the Illuminati there, and we have the Jews as a very prominent factor because a lot of the Illuminati are Jews and a lot of the Jesuits are Jews. And the Catholics are in control of the Holy Land with all of that land and buildings and money. Their money's being controlled by the Rothschilds, who are Jews. So it's a tangled web we weave, but they're all together in this game. And so with the three popes, the gray pope, the black pope, and the white pope, the black pope being the head of the Jesuits, the gray pope is the head of the bloodline families, which are the most powerful men in the world. And they say that the gray pope, Pipi Orsini, is the most powerful man, but there's still one person above him that's not identified, that's appointed. So, Henry Ford, we talked about that the Romans invented the theater. Henry Ford was a 33rd degree Mason, and he says, that the Jews control Hollywood pretty much, and that all the control, the moral and the financial manipulators of the public mind are influenced through the Jews. Now, an interesting thing that I found is, this is a rabbi he has gotten an award for his work in establishing the Temple Institute. And so he got this award in 2013, and he was interviewed in 2015 about the Noahide laws. And the interviewer said, what power does the Sanhedrin have with respect to the other nations of the world? For example, Pope Francis or the U.S. President Obama. And he said, well, you're commanded to kill him. And the interviewer said, sorry? And he said, you're commanded to kill him, and the sooner the better. So this tells you the level of influence that the Jews do have in this triangle here with the Illuminati and the Jesuits. There's now a Jewish organization opening an office in the Vatican for the first time ever. And of course, the Pope has been ranked one of the 50 most prominent Jews, and the bishops are doing the bidding for the Jews. And so the next little thing is the pyramid here showing this order, how the gray Jesuit council is near the top next to that elected or appointed official, which is secret. And then, so underneath of that, we have the black Jesuit order, then the white Vatican, and under that, all of these other things, Skull and Bones and Bohemian Club and all these. So Freemasons are actually down the list, but these people are under the power. We think that our leaders are making decisions, but there's a power and a force behind them. Behind the Black Pope is the papal bloodlines, the Grey Jesuit Council. And remember, this is where the Borgia crime family came out of, this group right here. That second icon over, they're the ones that worked with the Catholic Church to develop this order of Jesuits. So they are the shadow. The papal bloodlines are the shadow behind the Black Pope. He's got to listen to them, and then the Illuminati bloodlines are under them, and that's a shadow of the order of the Jesuits. They say, when we say in God we trust, it's gold, oil, and drugs, which when you read Fritz, what's his name? Fritz
Springmeier.
Springmeier, yeah. When you read his documents, he tells you exactly how drugs are a big part of the Illuminati families. But Ezekiel, he had a chapter in Ezekiel talks about the abominations in the temple and how the Lord showed him, behind the wall, and the Vatican's built a wall around the Vatican, but this kind of lines up with the Vatican, where he looked behind that wall and there were secrets behind the wall, and the secrets were wicked abominations. Idols were in the house of God. You couldn't see them, but they were behind the wall. And really what they were doing is they were worshiping the sun god Tammuz. Okay, so I think this Ezekiel 8 is exactly what's going on with the abominations in the temple. There's a lot of secrets going on. They are still worshiping and celebrating Tammuz. This is now in the Protestant churches. Czech publication says the most dangerous of men are those who appear very religious, especially when they're organized and in a position of authority. And of course, here's the Pope saying, yes, he would baptize an alien. So they're with their own observatory there at the Vatican. They're very involved with the outer space and the things that's going on in the extraterrestrial world. So I'd like to end this by saying that we want to pray for our world leaders. We want to pray that they become Nebuchadnezzars, that God will raise up some Pauls, just as he brought Saul down and he struck him blind so that they could see truth. That out of these, there will be some out of the household of Caesar. Like Paul said, the saints that are from the household of Caesar salute you. Let's pray for our leaders, that they will raise up as Nebuchadnezzars and they will see truth. That's the ending to this. If you would like to get in touch with me, or if you're interested in my book, I'm not here to promote that, but it is available on Amazon. It talks about 3 warnings the Lord gave me when I saw the crescent moon over the Sea of Galilee. Be not deceived. Be not distracted. And Jesus is the only true God. So those are some of the things about the book. There's my information if you'd like to get in touch with me. I need to plug my computer in. The battery's going dead. That's it. That's all I have.
All right. Well, I just want to say that was just amazing. Diana, great job. And I know the time and prayer and effort it takes to put together a presentation like that. These things just don't fall down out of the sky. So thank you. I appreciate it so much, and I know our listeners appreciate it so much. It was just awesome. And I'm going to ask our listeners to do us a favor. If you would, let's do a little Sunday night slam. Hit that like button if you appreciate this kind of content. On the count of 3, hit that like button, and that will help us to continue to be able to get this kind of content out. Let's go a 1, 2, 3, and slam. Hit that like button. And I am just really, I'm just so thankful. I just can't thank you enough. Great job. Check out Diana's YouTube channel and check out her book. And what can we say? Hey, great job.
Thank you. If you have any questions or comments or like to send those directly to me, or if you have any questions you want to do tonight, I'm open for that as well. It's whatever you want to do, David.
All righty. Well, do you want to take some questions?
Sure. I got my computer plugged in now.
All righty. Well, listen, does anyone have a question? If you have a question for Diana, put it in the we'll take a couple here. I know we've gone long, but uh put it in all caps and put it in there. What, Brian? Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. And a big shout out to Jared Miller for, as always, doing a great job. Thank you, Jared. And they're saying don't stop now. I tell you what, they've been over 2 hours and they're still ready to roll. Okay,
Well,
here's one.
yeah.
There's one here. Any thoughts on the son of perdition?
I'll let you take that one, David.
Well, in the scripture, Judas is called the son of perdition by Christ, and the beast in Revelation 17 is called the son of perdition, and that comes from a root word that is the same as Apollo and Apollyon, and there's gonna basically there's two beasts in Revelation 13. One is a military leader, political leader, and the other is a religious leader. And there's just no doubt in my mind that the false prophet is going to be one of the popes. There's just no one else that can possibly measure up for that. So, yeah.
Well, there was a big display of Apollyon in the Vatican.
Yeah.
So someone asked whether the Sanhedrin was who killed Jesus. That's the court system. Yeah, the court system. Caiaphas was the leader of the Sanhedrin that referred Jesus out to Pilate. Good question. The name of my book is Truth is Not of This World, and it can be found on Amazon, and there's links to it off of my website as well.
Yeah, out of respect for everybody, this is Brian. I didn't want to interrupt the guest here, but the question was that y'all couldn't hear me ask it to Diana here. Are the reptilians at the top? That's by Johnny Kirk.
Yes, I saw that question. Are the reptilians at the top? Well, they could be. What do you think about that, David?
Well, we're going to be talking about that very soon on a Sunday night. And there is definitely this reptilian inbreeding from the Genesis 6 scenario. And the idea of reptilians is not nearly as wild as what some people might think. And I absolutely believe that the serpent has sown his seed right in the midst of these bloodlines.
Here's another question.
Someone asked why.
Oh, go ahead, Diane. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Why is the U.S. embassy in Israel? Donald Trump moved the embassy there, and he's also advocated other countries to move their embassies there. I believe, if you'll listen to the Noahide session that we did, that it is an effort to bring America and the world, as they move their embassies there, under the court system of the Sanhedrin when they get ready to implement that, if they get to that point, just like the Tower of Babel. God stopped them, and I believe he can stop them again.
Here's a really good question for both of you. What do you think about the Pope opening doors with the staff? That's a very interesting one.
I haven't researched it enough to give an answer. I just started watching some of that today.
Well, I think there's a reality to it. The doors are being opened, and there's the spiritual activity is at an all-time high. We see the drones, we see the orbs, and I think this is connected with what the Bible talks about, the removal of the restrainer, when it's going to be Katie bar the door when the pit of hell's opened. And you can just feel the demonic activity just increasing and becoming more intense. And this is just the signal for the Israel of God to pick up our game, and it is no game, it's spiritual warfare. So I think there's a real reality to what's going on in the spiritual world, and I think the Pope very well knows it. They are literally building. We were talking about this with Jillian on our last broadcast, and they're literally building that satanic temple in the spirit. Just like the body of Christ, we are the temple. They're building their demonic temple, and they're doing everything they can to draw people into it. And such a great job tonight bringing in these people that you wouldn't think about being Jesuits, Joseph Prince and Copeland and these people. And the Catholic Church doesn't use the word Protestant anymore because who's protesting? They call them non-Catholics. So, we'll just let them know there's still a few people out here protesting. There certainly is. But fantastic job. This is a broadcast to listen to and re-listen to. There's just so much here. When you watch this again, you'll just get so much more out of it. And I'm just very thankful to be able to put this up on our channel. But I tell you, with that, I'm with just great thankfulness to Brian for making it all happen, and to Diana for all her hard work, and to all of you for hanging out with us on this cold and wintry Sunday night. We're just going to say until next Sunday night, 7 p.m. Central, a big high five and good night, everybody, from FOJC Radio Sunday Night Live. God bless y'all.